On today's Locked On Jayhawks Football Friday, KU has a transfer lineman from Michigan, Amil Herring, and a 2025 running back commit in John Kelly.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. Find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. You can get our show here with Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, it's a Football Friday, and we've got some good KU football news to get to for this Football Friday. The recent news of Michigan transfer offensive lineman, former four-star recruit Amil Herring, joining KU out of the transfer portal, and John Kelly Jr., a running back in the class of 2025, committed earlier this week to KU, so we're breaking those down. Other portal targets still out there for KU at this point and what they're trying to add, and plenty more KU football in this episode of the show. First, it is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play Store today. We're going to start out with the latest commitments for KU, one from the transfer portal, one from the high school ranks. And we'll start with the big one that happened yesterday afternoon with Amil Herring, who is an interior offensive lineman from the University of Michigan. Certainly, players from Michigan, that's usually a good sign, especially linemen from there. And, the last Michigan transfer you brought on, Cornell Wheeler, was Andrew Russell after that, before that, whatever. Cornell Wheeler going to be like the leader of your defense this year. So that one worked out, although that one took a few years to get going. Maybe the same case here because he's a younger player. Either way, KU had a visit with Amil Herring last weekend. You got a commitment on Thursday afternoon, and I certainly couldn't have heard that he is the cousin of Isaiah Marshall. Like, they grew up playing football together, and obviously Isaiah Marshall coming to KU now, again, that couldn't have hurt to kind of have, that guy in your ear and have that duo and the Detroit pipeline that Kansas established. That can't hurt either, right? He's a 6'3", 300-pound offensive lineman from Southfield, Michigan, who spent one season at the University of Michigan in 2023. So I guess he has a national title ring. He played in one game and therefore preserved his red shirt last season. When he was in high school, he was ranked as a four-star recruit. He was ranked as a top 30 interior offensive lineman, according to 24/7 Sports. And now, because he redshirted his first year, he will have 4 years left of play. Here's some of what 24/7 Sports' Alan True had to say on his scouting report. Just a few excerpts from what he had to say. 4-year high school starter who's played very good competition in big games, smart and very technically sound, and excellent all-around intangibles, has violent hands and stops defenders with his punch, needs to continue to improve overall agility and lateral quickness, smart, hardworking player. And according to his Michigan player profile on their website, apparently he had 46 straight starts in high school. So this is a kid who was starting varsity ball at a high level from like right away as a freshman. And he had 240 pancake blocks over the course of the season. I mean, that is incredible. 240 pancake blocks over the course of his career. Now, he clearly has the size, clearly has the talent to make an impact on this team, whether it's now or down the road. But the fact that he is joining now, that he won't be starting till the fall, going to have to learn the playbook late, everything like that, does make this, I guess, a little bit akin to the Kobe Baines move. Now, the Kobe Baines move, when they picked him up as a transfer from Louisville, that might have even been a week or two into fall camp when they were able to bring him aboard. With this one, at least you have him from the very get-go, but still, that was a guy in Kobe Baines who clearly a very talented player and has been a solid player for KU so far and is expected to be, one of your starting guards this year. But in the case here, yeah, maybe those few extra weeks happen, but you do wonder, is it going to be hard to crack that too deep when you're just joining the program, this late into the game? So I think the way I view it is kind of similar to Baines. If you remember Kobe Baines' first season with Kansas, because he did need more time to acclimate and figure everything out, by the time he got to like midway through the season, maybe he's rotating in for some snaps. By the time that season came to a close, he was playing some snaps and showing some good highlights for KU, even if it wasn't starter level snaps. And then by the time the next year happens, he was one of KU's top 6 linemen last year and played starter level snaps for KU. right? So something similar would not shock me here from Amir Herring. Like maybe he's not on the 2 deep in the first week of the season just because you're acclimating to everything. Then maybe by week 3 or week 6 or week 8 or something like that, you do crack the 2 deep, whether it is, at the center position or the guard position, which it sounds like he could be, either one. Maybe ideally, honestly, to be center for KU, given where things are at right now with, Michael Ford and Shane Baumgartner, and then those are 2 seniors who would graduate. But I think the way I view it is right now you'd say, okay, he's in competition with, I guess, Dre Dorian for that 3rd center spot, or he's in competition with, some of those players who would be 3rd string, 4th string guards. But yeah, once the time you get him comfortable in the middle of the season or the end of the season, you would think the talent would weigh out. And eventually maybe he does start getting some snaps. Maybe he is part of that 2 deep. But regardless of what happens for this year, this is one where, yes, it adds more depth and competition right now, but I think where it's most exciting is the future, because come 2025, Kansas is going to be losing Ford and Baumgartner, who I just mentioned at center. You're going to be losing Darrell Simmons Jr. at the guard position, right? So there's a lot of playing time and opportunity that comes free. You're going to be looking for more guys to step up. So, I mean, it's not unthinkable that Herring could be your starting center as soon as 2025 if he does well over the course of this season here, even if by doing well, it's not on the field and it's just on the practice field. But beyond that, come 2026, when Herring at that point would be a redshirt junior, KU not only would lose those 3 players that I previously mentioned, but by 2026, you're losing Kobe Baines, Nolan Gorchika, DK Stearns, Hank Kelly on just the interior of the offensive line where he projects to be. So it's even more important to have plans for 2026 and beyond. And between the high school commits that you've kind of gathered from this class and, the upcoming class and everything now in addition like this, you feel better about this unit. And clearly this is a very talented guy that gives you future pro potential. I mean, he was at Michigan. He was a 4-star recruit. Like, it's not that unthinkable that can be the case. And that is always nice for KU to have on the line. Then they also got a high school commit earlier this week. That was a class of 2025 running back in the form of John Kelly Jr. He is from Cypress Christian School in Houston, Texas. 6'1", 205-pounder on Rivals. 24/7 Sports lists him at 6 foot, 185 pounds. Either way, 6 foot, 6'1" for a running back. That's pretty good height for a running back position. And, somewhere between 185, 205 pounds with another year of high school coming up where he can gain more weight. He'll be a senior this upcoming fall in high school. He's a bigger running back. He has a 5.6 3-star grade on Rivals. He was an 87 graded 3-star on 24/7 Sports, which out of comparison, Red Martell in last year's class was an 86 and Harry Stewart was an 88. So he's kind of somewhere between those guys. And then he was an 87 graded 3-star with On 3. On the 24/7 composite, he is listed as a top 800 recruit. Nationally, I've always said, if Kansas is getting like top 1,000 recruits, that's kind of where you will really butter your bread. He had offers from Arizona, Arkansas State, Duke, Houston, Missouri, Texas Tech, and others. So, popular running back here. And apparently he ran a 10.75 100 meter as his best time, which out of comparison, you might be wondering, okay, are there other players that have, comp to show me how fast he is? Jason Bean ran a 10.3 in high school. So Bean would be faster here, but we knew Bean was like the fastest guy on KU's team last year. So maybe that's a bad, comparison. I went back and found Savion Morrison ran like a 10.7 in high school. So, I mean, Savion Morrison, you're not talking about him as like the fastest guy on the team or maybe one of the fastest guys on the team, but I view Savion Morrison as a fast running back. You know what I mean? Like generally. So if you're talking about Kelly has slightly below Savion Morrison speed, but he's a big running back at 6 foot, 6'1", 200 pounds, that's a real nice combo to have. So now you look at the overall class for KU here in 2025, quarterback in David McComb, a running back in Kelly, an interior offensive lineman in Anderson Kopp, and then a defender in Malachi Curvey. It's going to be a big class for KU with all the seniors that they're losing. There'll be a big transfer portal class that they'll bring in the fall also. As far as the future of the running back position, come 2025, when Kelly would arrive as a true freshman, the Jayhawks would then be without Devin Neal and Torrey Laughlin. Then you're probably looking at Daniel Highshaw, Savion Morrison, who would be seniors that year. Second year, Harry Stewart. Third year, Johnny Thompson is kind of your top 4 running backs in some order there. Then come 2026, Those first two guys graduate. So then it would just be Stewart, Thompson, and now Kelly. So knowing that, they would have room to add another running back for, now, because then 2026 you could have it. Though I don't think it'll be their top focus. It's more of one of those things where it's like, hey, if one of the running backs you've still been recruiting is like, hey, I want to come there now, then, or if it's this just, 4-star unworldly prospect or something like that, you say, yeah, we'll make it work. But I don't think you're going out of your way to find a bunch of new running backs or going out of your way to unearth new ones or something like that, given where you are and all the other positions that you do kind of need. But when you think about it, both these commits in a real way are about the future for KU. Now, Amil Herring can have a bigger impact right away. And, come 2025, will probably have a bigger impact than what John Kelly would as a true freshman at that point. But both these guys are really moves where it's like, yeah, maybe come 2026, 2027, you could be really feeling the fruits of the labor of both those guys. Who knows? All right, let's continue on with other transfer portal targets for KU, because it seems like they still might have like one scholarship open available, and it certainly seems like they could use a pass rusher. So we'll talk about that on this episode of the show. First, we're brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, who are some other targets for KU at this point in the transfer portal? Well, with just one scholarship open now, things start to get a little bit more choosy. And yes, you could be convinced that KU could use another tight end with the Deshaun Hanukkah news. Even if you feel good, which I do, about Trevor Cardell and Jared Casey, KU likes to play a lot of tight ends, and they play a lot of 3 tight ends at certain times where, it'd be nice to have another guy. Now, maybe eventually Tavita Noah's that guy, maybe, Jaden Ham with another offseason, but you're counting on guys to make strides that you don't necessarily know are going to happen over the course of the summer and in fall camp, right? Like with Jaden Ham, he might be a great player in a year, in 2 years, or it could be this fall. Who knows, right? So you could convince yourself of that. You could convince yourself of a transfer portal quarterback, just to give more experience to that backup spot that you previously had with Jason Bean. You could convince yourself of a linebacker, right? I mean, KU's linebacking core, even though I think it's gotten increasingly better, the level of play each of the 3 years in the Lance Leipold era, I think each year it's gotten a little bit progressively better. It still has been one of the, if you were comparing positionally, the KU linebacker unit to the rest of the linebacker units in the Big 12, it would compare more toward the bottom half of things, right? And this year, I do actually think it feels like every year in the Lance Leipold era, I don't mean to turn this into a side on the linebackers or something, but it feels like every year in the Lance Leipold era, there's been a position group that surprises you. In year 2, I don't know, I'd have to think more on it in year 1 because that was such a whirlwind. But in year 2, it was the receivers. It was like Kwame Lassiter just graduated, and it's like, okay, like you had a bunch of guys that you recruited hard with Emmett Jones, Luke Grimm, and LJ Arnold, but it's like at that point they didn't have any production. It was kind of an unknown, and it turns out that receiver core really good. Then last year, it was kind of like that with the defensive line. It was like, yeah, you just lost Lonnie Phelps, and the defensive line besides Lonnie Phelps wasn't like overwhelming the year before to begin with, and you lost a ton more seniors to that. Like, how good is it going to be? And kind of surprised. And you had Austin Booker, and you had Devin Phillips, and Gage Keys and Tommy Dunn, and some of these guys made big steps forward. DJ Withers and stuff, right? This year, I'm wondering if that's going to be the linebackers, because I am high on Cornell Wheeler. I am high on JB Brown. And I think another year after experience last year is going to help both of them. So I think both of them can be real players for this team. Who knows if some of the guys like Logan Brantley can make that jump to get more playing time and stuff. But I think it can be underrated. But anyway, you could convince yourself that you could use another linebacker, because that has not been, a position of strength for you in recent years. And there are some linebackers out there in the portal. I think I saw it's like a Texas linebacker or something that was certainly of interest. But Now that you are down to, it seems like just one scholarship open, which to be clear, I don't know that for sure because they keep this stuff kind of hush. When you have 85 scholarships, it's a lot harder to kind of figure out. I don't know why coaches don't release that or why that's not like publicly accessible. Like I'm trying to think of, I don't know, maybe there's a reason that I just haven't thought of, but like I'm trying to think the negative of that. If like I don't know, would that be used in negative recruiting? Either way, they certainly have been targeting defensive linemen. Jaden Wayne was somebody they were trying to get into the building. He has since committed to Washington. Tremel Logan was somebody who was of interest, had really good numbers after entering the portal. He's already committed to Louisville. And now kind of the latest name is, I think this is the right pronunciation, Bai Jobe. It's spelled B-A-I, and then the last name Jobe. It sounds like KU trying to get a visit in. He is a 6'4", 235-pound defensive end from Norman, Oklahoma, who attended Michigan State this past season as a true freshman, played just one game, made 2 tackles, preserved a redshirt. Honestly, a lot of similarities between Jobe and Herring. You're talking about a kid who was at one of the Michigan schools, played just one game as a freshman, preserved a redshirt, but was a former highly recruited player, both 4-star recruits. Now, Jobe was actually even higher rated on the recruiting rankings, so he'll be a redshirt freshman this upcoming year with 4 years left. He was given a 90 transfer grade on 24/7 Sports, which, I mean, that is very high praise for what he brings to the table. And out of comparison, like Amil Herring is an 88, which that's really good too. And I'm trying to remember what Lonnie Phelps was. I think it was an 88 or an 89. But I will say, like, keep in mind some of those transfer grades. It's not necessarily indicative that this guy is going to come in and be that good right away. It's more so the overall career. And so the long-term potential, he was a former top 60 recruit in the country, very athletic defensive end. This was part of the scouting report from Chris Singletary of 24/7 Sports. Very smooth, fluid moving player with good coordination and change of direction. Very good athlete for someone his size. You see flashes of this when you see him return kicks and open up running in the open field. Keeps his pad low and does not expose his chest by playing upright. Able to flip his hips to run the hoop on his outside pass rush moves. Solid with his hands and punch that will improve with added power and technique work. I mean, very athletic defensive end, high ceiling. But I do wonder if you'd more so be talking here like a Dylan Brooks equivalent, where Dylan Brooks came in as a guy who was a former very highly recruited defensive end at Auburn, hadn't really done a ton on the field, younger player, but former highly recruited guy. He was given an 89 transfer grade on 24/7 Sports because of the potential, the ceiling of what it could potentially turn into. And that ceiling wasn't actualized in year 1. And now in year 2, right now, he's dealing with an injury. So you hope he can get to that ceiling. But it does make you wonder, like with Jobe, would he be a really good player for you right now? Or would it be in 2 years or 3 years? And that doesn't mean you don't take him or anything, because you would gladly take that, and you don't have the option to get, top 60 recruits very often. And in theory, he's similar recruiting ranking to like Deshaun Warner. You can be like, oh, this is basically like bringing in Deshaun Warner, but somebody else watched him in daycare for a year. You know what I mean? Like somebody else progressed him for a year, so now he's more college ready. I just think it's interesting because clearly Kansas is looking not just for any defensive end. They're looking for somebody they can come in and be like, hey, you're good enough to start at the position that was left by Austin Booker. And that could absolutely be Jobe. It's also possible, though, that Jobe turns out to be more of a rotational player this year and then is a really good player in a year or two. But again, you absolutely take it because you take the swing on the potential that he does have. And I mean, if it does hit, you're talking about a guy who would at least have to be with you for this year and next year, and then could honestly go pro after redshirt sophomore year if he was that good. And clearly we've seen KU be able to develop these guys and then be able to hit the ground running as transfers coming in. So this would be a big time get if Kansas get to get him, because very talented rusher. And a lot of teams are looking for those in Bai Jobe. All right, let's continue on more KU football transfer portal talk on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's so much good stuff in the game. We got to keep going. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so discover it yourself. Get off the bench, go download it now, free on Google or Apple Store today. Again, the Google Play Store or the App Store today. Check it out with Monopoly Go. So thank you to everydayers out there tuning into each and every episode this week. We did a deep dive on Jackson Robinson. We'll get to some more deep dives next week, even though the portal is closed for basketball, at least until things close up for KU. But the portal officially closed for football, too, on Tuesday earlier this week. Grad transfers had till Wednesday to enter. And it is something where, yeah, sometimes it can take time for the papers to process and everything to get through and the players to officially enter. But KU has a pretty good idea what the full scope of who is available at this point in time. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what is the drop dead date? They could add a player. I go back to that Lorenzo McCaskill move. That was like at the end of June when they brought in Lorenzo McCaskill. So, I mean, anytime you can get a good player to fill that, final spot, so to speak, you absolutely do it. But KU, if they do indeed only have the one scholarship left, they can be picky and they can be choosy a little bit with who they want to give that to. Obviously, you do want to be picky, but with the new rules, there still is no reason to fill the 85th scholarship to a certain extent. Could that one just go to somebody who's a walk-on who earned it if you can't find somebody who's, worth giving that to? Yeah, absolutely. Does that also just mean that you should just take someone just to be like, hey, if we don't use this spot, we're just not going to use it. I'd rather just have a body here, or even if they're just like a practice player, let's use it just to use it. Yes and no. Yes, if it's a one-year guy, but you can't just do that with any player because this obviously doesn't apply to Jobe. He's very much like somebody who would be like, yes, come in and you might be a starter right away. But, there are certain guys where you might not normally add and you might be like, okay, well, he's the best option available. Even if we don't think he's good enough, we'll just add him anyway. And then he has 3 years left to play and you're stuck with him on scholarship, using up a scholarship that in future years you could use on somebody else. But if it's a one-year guy, then it's just like, okay, even if they're not very good, it's better to fill it than to not, as long as it is a one-year guy, because then the scholarship's off the board at the end of the season. So ideally they can be picky and choosy and not have to worry about that. And they get a guy like Bai Jobe or somebody else, and then everything's good and they would have nailed the kind of spring portal period. But we'll wait and see. And if something does happen, we'll talk about it right here with Locked On Jayhawks, where you can find your show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the action. That'll do it for us today on LOJ. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.